online broadcast network, AfterBuzz TV. Over 20 million weekly downloads in over 150 countries, and your number one source for after-show entertainment. AfterBuzz TV, the destination for TV superfans, producing after-shows for over 300 of your favorite TV shows, interviewing celebrities and showrunners, and bringing you behind-the-scenes exclusives. All thanks to E! Entertainment's Maria Menounos, producer Kevin Undergaro, and internet leader Akamai. Now, let the buzz begin!
Hello and welcome to the greatest King of the Nerds AfterBuzz After Show ever.
Wait a minute, that's
one.
not our theme.
It's close enough. If you haven't already, go to youtube.com/AfterBuzz TV, also AfterBuzz TV. Hit subscribe. Also, we're on iTunes and SoundCloud. Those are cool places that you can subscribe as well. I'm your host, Yael Tygiel, back with us, Papa Nerd himself, Curtis Armstrong. Welcome back.
Thank you. It's really nice to be back.
We missed you.
I missed you too. I was very sad up there in Vancouver. I actually did get to see the first episode that you did with Xander, and I love Xander.
Yeah.
And I want to publicly thank Xander for stepping in and doing such an awesome job.
Yeah, no, Xander was great. It was so I was sad that you were gone, but it was okay because at least
Xander was here.
Great. Yeah,
I'll tell you,
could have been worse.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we're talking about Murder at Nerdvana.
Yes.
Which so my favorite, because I am an SVU super nerd.
Oh,
so like
okay.
As soon as I was like CSI stuff, oh, this is great.
Well, it was an inspired idea, and it was something that really this was a Genevieve episode. I think these were ideas that she had sort of percolating for a while. We were talking about it on our podcast, and it was one of those things where, as we work on the show, we'll periodically have challenge meetings. And so we'll, get together with whoever is organizing the challenges and talk about, we have a whiteboard and, what are the nerd wars that we have and what are the nerd offs that we have. And Murder at Nerdvana, this idea of doing sort of a CSI nerd war, was sort of one of those things that was on there, and then they were going, oh, well, maybe not. Maybe we'll put something else on there. And the way that Genevieve told me was that it really was right up until the last minute almost. She was not sure whether it was ever going to wind up on there. They felt pretty confident about the nerd off, Nightmare on Nerd Street, as we call it. But they weren't sure that the other would play. And then, of course, what got me when I finally saw it was how really well it played. I mean,
yeah.
And we have an amazing group of editors who work on this show, and those people put together something that looked so great, and it was just like the show.
Yeah.
And, I guess you could argue that it was sort of a peculiar thing for King of the Nerds, but
not at
I think
all.
No. I mean, it's actually a form. It's forensic science.
Yeah.
It's something which is actually. I mean, obviously, you have a lineup of Frankenstein's monster and the werewolf and the Invisible Man and a beautiful Dracula, a beautiful vampire. Obviously, those people don't actually kill people that way, but it was a nice little treat to put in there for people, sort of a monster mash, as I think of it.
It was a graveyard smash.
Yeah, exactly.
We will talk more and more about the nerd war in a minute, but first, we have Colby with us. Colby!
Hey, Colby.
Hello.
We are so excited that you're with us, although we're so sad that you're with us. Welcome. Also, I want to clarify for everyone who's out there tweeting at your name, you do not have a Twitter. That is correct?
Yes, I absolutely do not have a Twitter. No self-respecting high school teacher should have one.
We understand totally. It's just, there are people who, I guess somebody has already taken over your name and I was tweeting him at one point thinking it was you. So, but that's all right. That's not a problem you need to deal with.
What's weird about him is it says in the description that he has no relation to Colby, and then he tweets as though he is you.
Yeah. I mean, that covers him, I guess, or something. Anyway, but the point is, he doesn't have a Twitter, so that's...
Okay, so I just wanted to make sure everyone knew.
Yeah.
So how is it back at school? I want to know if if your students have seen the show.
I would say that, I won't say most, but a very good number of them do watch on a regular basis. They talk about the experience. They ask me, certain questions, which really gets in the way of that whole teaching thing. But, if there's 2 minutes before the bell goes off at the beginning of class and they want to talk about it, or they want to talk to me after school, well, that's great. And some of them have a very, very direct and very passionate views of how I played, and definitely of how most of my competitors played.
Really?
So, yeah, hearing the feedback from them, because I will say there are definitely elements of high school social statuses that you see that get played on the screen, and they respond to that.
I definitely can see that.
Yeah.
I wonder if, I feel like, because you taught the entire world really how to cram for any sort of event with the 3 things you can learn about, because you don't have time to learn it all. Have any of your students tried to use that and then been like, well, that's what you've said to do?
I would like to believe that as an educator that the way that my assessments are, that they are very anti-cramming. I'm very direct with my expectations and how those expectations should be shown in all of my assessments. So I would hope that they don't have to just know 3 things. You can just know the thing that I told you that you need to know, and then prove that on a test, and then we'll all go home happy. Like, your parents are happy that you did well. I'm happy that you did well. You get a good grade, and then you don't have to cram to do well for anything that I tell you that you need to know.
Well, also, doesn't it also says something about the difference between, educating and being on a comedy reality show. I mean, it is really a different world.
Those are different? What?
Yeah, I mean, Colby. Yeah. Just very quickly, I just want to say one thing about Colby, because there are a number of broken hearts around the Twitterverse. The fact that you're gone, because people had really come to love what you represented, and what you represented is something which we don't have a lot of on our show in any season, which is somebody who is mature and reflective and doesn't get caught up in all the craziness, the way that you're sort of tempted to do as nerds. You're in a place where the nerds are, they're surrounded by other nerds, and they're surrounded by all of these toys and all of these things, and you're doing all of these exciting challenges and all that. Whatever else is going on, we had Colby, who we could always turn to when we needed a comment about what was going on that was sort of from the distance. From where Colby sat, it was this. And it always landed, and it was always succinct and dry and funny, and we loved having you on this show. It was really, really great. And I just wanted to say that. Now you can ask him anything you want.
Well, I wanted to say that I in the past after shows, I've brought a Colby quote in every episode where you summed up what was going on in a very, this is clearly what needs to be said. Now you're all caught up. And I think this episode we had that when you were like, I'm not going to join drunken Star Wars improvised reenactments.
Yeah. I would say that I guess the response to that, like, oh yeah, like he's so outcast, and it's like, yeah, like I certainly felt somewhat outcast just because, well, everybody was cheering for Heather and that previous nerd off, and it's like, okay, but what doesn't get played up is that I just thought the idea was really lame, and I just didn't want to be bothered with it. It was because the thing about like improv was it wasn't improv because they just
it was reenactment.
Yeah.
So, well, I didn't see Star Wars until I was 15 years old, and my favorite recollection of this is that I had seen Spaceballs 15 to 20 times before I knew it was a parody. I just thought this was just an amazing, funny film. I had no other basis of understanding it, and I just kept laughing. And it's like, oh yeah, that's based off Star Wars, right? Like, what's Star Wars? Like, that's a real thing.
Wait, no, I knew what Star Wars was, but I'd never seen it, and I saw Spaceballs also like 15, 20 times. That's because we watched lots of Jewish movies in my house, but I also was like, yeah, this is just, it's a bunch of Jews being funny. Like, that's what this is. I get that it's a parody, but I don't need to see Star Wars. I'm with you, man. Spaceballs, all the way. All right, I want to talk about the kind of exclusion thing, because there was a point in this episode where I felt like you needed distance and time to be alone, and they, the rest of the group, kind of turned on you in this way of like, don't feel excluded. We want you to be one of us. But by doing so, at least to me, it felt like they just kept making this distance between you guys so much bigger. Am I anywhere near what it was like?
I mean, I wouldn't say that. Like, there is, and typically when I'm involved in a situation like that, it doesn't matter how mature I am or how I project. It's just like, when I'm in that situation, I feel like I'm 15 years old again. And it's simply that sometimes I just need to be away from people so that I can figure out how to reconnect. And it's just that the vast majority of their attempts to reconnect, as kind-hearted as they may be, they weren't in ways that engaged me or intrigued me in any way. So even if even if I weren't in that situation, I would have done something else. Those nights when people were out drinking, like, there were moments where I just wandered to the other side of the house because I didn't want to be part of that. And there was a lot of that with this situation as well. It's like, I don't want to be with you guys right now. So instead of showing up and having it be awkward, I'd rather just be alone than have it be awkward for everybody here.
Okay. That makes sense.
Yeah, it does. It does.
Do you think that you would have continued to feel, if you would have stayed, you would have continued to feel even more pressure from everyone else coming at you? Because they really, I think, at first I think they were like, well, he's a really good competitor. And then it just became so much more, like, well, now we have to take him down. Do you think if you would have made it past this one, things would have gotten worse?
I mean, I can't say for sure how they would have responded. I still think that the fear would have still been there, and I don't think that they would have changed their strategy against me at all. Maybe someone would have defected to join Caitlin and me. I don't know how people would have played, but I think that with that in mind, it's like, oh yeah, there's going to be a trivia challenge at the end, more than likely. So the trivia champion has to be taken out, and we need to send our best player, or if you're Jonathan, you're the best player, you send somebody else to come at me. And that defined their strategy for multiple weeks. And I just don't think that would have changed had I knocked out Amanda.
All right, then let's talk about Amanda getting chosen. And your brain was rattled for 30 seconds. You're like, I need 30 seconds. What was going on in your head? What exactly was going through your mind?
The primary, what went through my mind is, how did Jonathan weasel his way out of this one? And now it's painfully obvious that the ability to kind of definitely tug at heartstrings, because I took out Heather, and despite the fact I had nothing to do with Heather being put in that situation, you know, because I didn't vote myself into that nerd off, everybody else did. I didn't go to the other team to say that, you know, you should vote in Heather, because I assumed they were voting in me. So I had no say in that, how that played out, except being put in and winning. And then at the end, Heather says, you still need to go get Colby. And I'm like, okay. I just didn't know how to respond to that situation. And finding that Amanda felt the need to avenge her, that she needed to take one for the team and put herself out there in the challenge that that potentially could have given her the edge. I was kind of shocked by that. She could have had a 100% chance to go on. Because I guarantee you, if she asked me, I would have gladly voted in Jonathan, knowing that I would go, or voted for Jonathan, knowing that that would come back at me. I wasn't afraid of either of them, just flat out, without prior knowledge of what the challenge would be.
Right.
So they all seem to figure out, well, Lily figured out what the challenge or what the nerd off was possibly going to be.
Right.
Did you know that everyone else thought they knew what it was?
No, I had very little interaction. And so when I reached the point, this happened just about every time that I was in, except the first time I attempted to make a deal and failed miserably. Afterwards, when Team Smash loses, and that was so often, when Team Smash loses, I know that I'm on the chopping block, so I don't have time to cut deals. I just need to mentally condition myself for the upcoming nerd off, because I know that I'm going to be there. Mm-hmm. So I didn't know that they decided to parse everything out. I didn't know that they put Amanda up with the possibility that the nerd off was going to be horror based, because when we lost, I think in my mind, when we lost the nerd anthem, I was like, well, maybe this will be music or dance based. Oh no, it's in his history based. Like, sorry, Ori, your time's up.
Yeah.
So they can be completely unrelated. In this case, they decided to make it related, and it didn't work out in my favor.
Yeah, Curtis.
I mean, what can I say? These things come up, and you really have no way of predicting anything. I mean, we wouldn't know. So the one thing that does happen, though, I think, in that kind of strategy, the kind of strategy that they were working with, the Secret Six, one of the problems with that is, and when you have a strong competitor like Colby, and in previous seasons it was Zach or Genevieve, where once they put you in, because in Colby's case they had a genuine reason for concern. Everybody has a fairly good idea, or thinks they do, what the end game is going to be. The end game would have been Colby's, if that's what we usually do, if we did what we've done in the past. And that's all they have to work from when they're making their strategy. So they're thinking, we can't have him there. But the problem is that every time you vote in somebody and then repeatedly vote in that person, no matter who the person is and no matter who you are, it's going to cause probably more trouble than it's worth, I think. From a strategy standpoint, there are reasons to not do that. Because in the first place, it sort of messes with you, and it definitely messes with the person who feels, that they are under constant attack. And ultimately, as these people continue to win, if they continue to win, then it makes it even crazier and more nightmarish for everybody. So it makes for good television, but I've always been a little suspect of that thing. I don't know what the alternative is, and I certainly don't know what I would do if I were in their shoes. But it just, having now seen it happen a few times, I wonder about it.
Yeah. And Colby, even though you're known as the trivia king, it seems Amanda was who put herself in there, who was like, I know horror films. And then we see her every confessional while she's studying, and she was incredibly threatened by you, understandably so. But did you know at all that she felt, that she originally thought she could go in there and beat you, and then, as time went on, realized that she was kind of in over her head?
Well, I didn't send Caitlin in to spy on them, so I did not know. So it just reaches a point where I know I cannot affect how Amanda feels in any way. Mm-hmm. It's a waste of my time. So I need to focus on what I need to do to put the best foot forward in whatever challenge was at hand. So I would say that I'd say that my feeling about how Amanda was going to do, I knew she was competent. I knew that this was a passion of hers, and it was something that I needed to catch up with as quickly as possible. I didn't worry about her after that point. Worrying about her doesn't make me know anything else. So all I can do is go to Rotten Tomatoes, pull up the 100 best horror movies, try to have an idea of the plots of these films that I, for the most part have never seen, and apply, my natural, sense of trivia and how trivia questions are written, and hope that it worked out for the best. And, I fell just short.
Well, but yeah, I just want to say, under the circumstances, almost anyone else, maybe with the exception of Jonathan, almost anyone else in that house would have had more experience with horror films than you have. And the fact that it was as close as it was is a real testament to your ability to work however the method is that you use. And it's, you have a limited amount of time and a limited access to information, and yet you're still, right on top of her at the end. And that's remarkable, I think.
It was very impressive.
And by the way, as somebody who loves horror movies, if I had known, this will give you an example. If I had found out, if I was playing, and I had found out that it was a horror-based trivia challenge, I would have been thrilled at first. But then when Curtis, got the questions, I was going, I don't know any of these movies. The only one I knew, Colby, I'll bet you can figure this out. The only one that I knew the answer to for sure was Freaks, the first one.
And yeah, I actually lucked out because, it showed up on the list, and I distinctly remember having a conversation with Caitlin about the plot, about how, at the end, the cheating wife, who's actually pretty, gets turned into she gets turned into a chicken, effectively, with a human head. And, and I was just like, oh yeah. So I knew that and that was definitely more of not me being passionate about horror films, but that's one of those very well-known films that kind of transcends pop culture, and then reaches to a point of art. So that's how I was able to approach some of these films, like Nosferatu, or something in that similar vein. But when it came down to it, they brought up and I think of the question that I missed, and it's just, and you just don't have it. You just don't have that pop culture background, because I don't go to films to try to be scared.
I think Caitlin said it best. Like, the first Texas Chainsaw Massacre, shame on me. The rest of them, who cares? Oh, it was great.
No, shame on you.
Yeah.
After that, it's shame on me.
Right.
Yeah.
I speak English. Thank you so much, Colby, for joining us. Curtis, do you have any final things you want to say?
I've said them to him privately, and I can say it again. It was a pleasure. It was really great to have you on our show. And that's all I can say.
Colby, I know you're not on Twitter. That is correct. Not on Twitter. Do you have a public Facebook or somewhere people can keep track of you? Or have you disappeared into the ether?
So my Facebook is normal. So, I mean, if you really want to contact me, just send me a message. Like, that's not blocked. If it's really creepy, then I won't respond. But if you're a normal person and a fan, I've already responded to people who've contacted me. I'll try to do my best. It's always good to hear from people who support the way I played and the person that I am. So that's an open thing. And of course, I'm a public figure. I teach high school, so I'm not a hard man to find.
Well, thank you again so much. We miss you already. All right. So before we move on, I need to take a moment to talk about iTunes. Guys, iTunes. That's right. You can find us on iTunes and listen to all these podcasts for free because we clearly love the show. I'm going to make an assumption that Curtis is a big fan of the show.
I am.
Yeah. And when you leave a comment, you get a shout out on the air. We have comments that I'm going to read out on the air.
Okay.
So we got more 5 stars from Big by Wolfman 1, who says awesome show and an awesome podcast. Also, this person has a question for Xander, which I will pass along. From Butterfly Mom 89, we got amazing 5 stars. I love listening to the podcast talking about the show and their comments. It's super amazing that the fabulous Xander is on the show too. Keep up the great work. Super nerd fan. Fantastic 5 stars from Half-Blood Princess 7. This show is great. I love the discussion about each show. I really enjoy listening to each one. Excitedly await them each week. Also, of course, Curtis is awesome and Yael is hilarious. Thanks.
Well, see?
Yeah. 5 stars. You guys rock from KICCCR. You guys are awesome. Yeah, 3 C's. You get just as stoked about the show as I do. You get it. Internet 5. Okay. And a must download 5 stars from MCB255. This is the go-to podcast for any King of the Nerds fan. Yael, Xander, and sometimes Curtis do an excellent job. So sometimes you do an excellent job.
I know. Occasionally I do.
Of breaking down the best show on TV. Aww.
Oh, that's very nice.
Yeah, that's what you get for going on there and rating us. If you like us, 5 stars. If you don't, we didn't like you anyway. That's all there is to it. That's not true. 4 stars. Okay. Let's get back to the show.
Yeah.
Nerd War. CSI Challenge. So good. Jonathan volunteers to throw himself in. Amazing. If we go to Nerd Off, I volunteer.
Right.
Yeah. We'll talk about him backing out of that.
Yeah. I was about to say. I mean, yeah.
Yeah. But we talked a little bit about the Nerd War, and I loved this one so much. I was really worried when you were telling them that Pom Pom Kitty was dead.
Oh, the Nerd War. Yeah. I know. It's funny. It actually was it was originally. I was trying to remember when I was talking to Genevieve about this, that originally this had been Bobby had been murdered, and I forget how we got him out of it, that he was actually, and the truth is, I mean, it doesn't make a huge amount of sense if you really look at it, that Pom Pom Kitty faked her own death in order to be like us. Like, we actually fake our own deaths all the time.
Right.
It's what we do at Nerdvana. And yet, I can't remember what happened, how that changed, that it ceased being Bobby and became Pom Pom Kitty. But I just thought it worked great.
So it was Pom Pom Kitty who died, and then
supposedly, yes.
It's revealed that Pom Pom Kitty
faked her own death as the werewolf,
using a syringe.
Right. Yes, and it has been pointed out.
Yes.
That in fact a werewolf wouldn't need a syringe to kill somebody.
Right.
So I'm not saying if you track it as a story, it doesn't necessarily make any sense.
Right.
But it really was just an excuse to do forensic science things with the fingerprints and the blood spatters and all of that, and the hair follicles.
Here's my biggest problem was not that a werewolf could do it without a syringe, was that the Invisible Man would leave invisible fingerprints. Would he not?
The Invisible Man would leave.
invisible fingerprints.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, I guess you're right. I mean, I thought you were going to say that the problem was the Invisible Man. You could see the strings.
Oh no, I didn't even care about that.
Oh, okay.
No, that didn't bother me at all. I'm talking about the forensics.
Yeah, no, the forensics.
He should have been disqualified from the first section where they're
because he
doing
wouldn't
fingerprints.
Okay, you're right. You're right. I'll tell you, this is really interesting because this episode, that nerd war, has gotten so much attention because people are trying to figure out how to make it work logically. And I guess the best thing I can say is it's not worth the effort to try to make it work as a logical story because it's really just the excuse. But you're correct,
Yeah.
of course. I mean, I assume that. I don't know of any murders having been committed by an invisible man.
Right.
So whether they would leave invisible fingerprints or not, I don't know. I mean, they leave. We know from the Invisible Man movie that he was invisible, but he left footprints. So if he left footprints,
The difference is, so I thought about
but
this.
if you were picking up something and you were invisible,
Yeah.
you would still be connecting with it. So would not that leave fingerprints?
So I believe fingerprints is like the oils from your skin.
Right.
So if you're invisible, your oils are invisible, whereas footprints are your shoes or
The weight of your feet.
yeah, into something.
Into something.
Yeah,
Okay.
I thought this through.
All right. I see. I didn't. I never thought it. I just went, oh, how cool! We have the classic monsters are here, and it's CSI.
I'll say this: I want for the future seasons, there needs to be a different CSI challenge every time.
Oh,
just like Nerd Anthem repeats. I think this should be something that repeats.
Well, maybe. I don't know. I mean, we have to play out the rest of the season, see how, once we look back on it, you know, I mean, the anthem is a pretty easy one. You know, the debate was a pretty easy one. The cosplay, obviously, is an easy one to say, well, that's something we have to do every year. But at the same time, we want to, you know, keep, you know, we could, you know, eventually if we run long enough, then it becomes basically the same thing every time. You know, it'll be
A different murder.
yeah, but
Everyone loves murder mysteries.
well, no. I mean, they're doing some kind of a murder mystery. We wouldn't do the CSI again probably because that was one thing and it was a joke and it was funny. But I'm not sure we would really go back and do exactly the same thing. We might do a variation on it somehow.
Fine. Who's my
I mean, it was weird also. You know, something else. I mean, you know, we have Bobby and me, you know, dressed as Sherlock Holmes and Inspector Clouseau, neither of whom have anything to do with either the Universal Monster movies or CSI.
Right.
So it was really a mashup of everything. I mean,
Yeah.
It was all over the place.
It was wonderful. I loved everything about it.
Yeah, we really had a good time.
And Amanda, or was it Lily? One of them has seen Dexter.
Oh, Amanda, I
Amanda
think,
has
is
seen
the
Dexter.
Dexter fan. Yeah, she really likes Dexter.
Yeah, she said it like 5 times.
Yeah. she really likes Dexter.
We get it. She likes Dexter, guys. Calm down.
Yeah.
This was, I think, my favorite challenge, but that's because I love SVU. So I'm all over it. Let's talk about the Nerd Off Nightmare on Nerd Street.
Okay.
Or, as it's also referred to, statistical analysis and applied mathematics.
Right.
That is my favorite part of this whole episode.
Well, it's an interesting one. I was listening to some people who were talking about it just today on the internet, and they were talking about the real question which people have, which is that legit? Not, you know,
What do you mean?
The idea of being a host and faking out, you know, your contestants on camera, and you know, and making a joke of it. And it's a really interesting question because to us, of course, we were watching them talk about, you know, well, what if it's mathematics,
Right.
or what if it's horror, and what I don't know. They're going back and forth and back and forth and back
Right.
and forth. And it was not until we were already filming and we were up there and we'd done the entrance and we'd done, you know, the throne of games and all of the thing and the wind shot, and we were
Right.
doing all that had been already done, and we were about to get into the thing, and they came on my earbud and they said, do this. When it comes time, say, statistical analysis and,
And
applied
applied
mathematics. Hopefully that won't be necessary. But I will defend it that, we don't treat it like Survivor. We don't treat it like, the solemn, I mean, we do. We stand up there and the stentorian tones and saying, now you will be doing this, but it's always a joke. I mean, we're joking with the theme, we're joking with the form as much as we are doing an actual reality show. So to say to somebody, to freak someone out like that and throw them a total left curve is just another way that we have fun.
Well, the more I think about it, the more I was wondering, would it be fair to, as a show, to know that they figured out what it is and be like, well, they already figured out, we'll scrap it. But I think that what you guys did is just so much better.
Well, I mean, this is true ever since last season. It wasn't true so much the first season because they didn't know where they were. Obviously, everybody or most people have seen the show now. So when they come into the game, they have expectations and they think they know what's happening. And it's frightening with these nerds how analytical and intuitive at the same time they are about what they're doing and what the game is, and how frequently they will be ahead of us. And we are on our toes the whole time. We can't change anything. We can't change the nerd off, but when it's amazing how fast they catch on to it. And they're just, I mean, Lily came up with what it was. Essentially. I mean, it was a really good, I'm not even calling it a guess. It was really smart.
It was a good deduction.
It was a deduction, yes.
Which, I mean, Colby had it right that there was no, like, the nerd anthem was another one where we had the nerd anthem and then it
went to a history challenge.
Like,
by the same token, you don't want to do it every time so that everybody is always going to know. So if you go from the nerd anthem to a history challenge, that's another way of keeping them off balance. We can't give them, there's a limit to the fair play clause. Well, I mean, I know, for example, on America's Next Top Model, I don't know if they still do this, but back in the day when they would send a Tyra mail where they would give someone a challenge or a poem or a limerick or something that gave clues as to what the challenge or the photo shoot was going to be. And then some of the fun was, watching them try to figure out what that could possibly mean. And I feel like, sometimes they're like the one where we had the anthem and then history. It's like we would have never seen that coming. And today we had a Tyra mail experience. What was that?
That they saw the creatures, the monsters, and they were like, oh, well, put that together. I think what you guys did with scaring them was my favorite part.
It was one of my favorites ever. I just loved that. And I loved the fact that it was we had a challenge last season, and there was all of this discussion leading up to it. Katie was going into the challenge, and Brian, Hipster Hobbit, there was some discussion about the fact that it was almost a total replay of this. In fact, it really was a total replay, because she was thinking about, she had been picked to do it, and then he was going to sort of be the white knight and volunteer as tribute and do it in her place. That was what we were prepared for, because that was what the discussion was off camera. That was what he was going to do. And then the nerd off came, and we're waiting and nothing is happening. And I'm talking and Bobby is talking about, what the thing is, and we're sort of waiting for him to say, tribute. And he never said anything. And she wound up going through the challenge herself and getting thrown off. And this was almost identical to that. And what the reason for it is, I think he's pretty clear when Jonathan talks about it. I'm not sure I'd agree with Colby when he says weaseling his way out. It's the thing is, if you're it's playing the game, and this is where it gets tricky with King of the Nerds, is because people expect, for some reason, because I think they're nerds, or self-described nerd,
right?
Because of that, people have an expectation that they're going to be better than everybody, that they're going to make decisions based on some code,
right,
which we as outsiders, don't have access to,
right?
That there's something like that going on.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure that that's right or fair exactly. I mean, I think that once you're in this system and you're playing this game and you're doing it and you're in the moment and you're in the heat of the moment, you make decisions based on instinct as much as anything else, even apart from your alliances, if there are any alliances.
Right.
And, if you have Lily, for example, saying, I think it's a horror challenge, and you have him saying, well, I know nothing about that.
Right.
And I meant it when I said to Colby, he's the only other person I think who would be worse qualified for that nerd off.
Interesting.
And on the other hand, Amanda's really good at that, as she proved. So why is that an issue? I mean, he was clear about it, and he said, this is going to make me look really bad.
Right.
And he was right.
Well, I think my favorite moment is when it hits Lily that it's possible that she was wrong. And that if she was wrong, she just screwed over
everything.
her friend.
Yeah.
That was my second favorite part of the episode. I know. So when she went, oh, wait.
Because she had convinced herself,
right,
and she was absolutely right.
Right.
She had convinced herself it had to be that for the nerd off.
Yeah.
And she was worse affected. I mean, poor Amanda, fell over.
Yeah.
I mean, it was so unexpected for them.
I almost wish that it was a mathematical thing.
Yeah.
Well, that's how it ended. I loved the zombies. I loved my prediction from last week was correct.
Which was?
Because all I got from the promo was that something horror and beating something out of heads. And so I said that I think the heads are going to be like piñatas and you have to get something out of them. And I was correct.
Yes.
Which I'm rarely correct.
Well, you got that one.
Yeah. So woohoo, points for me. I think it's time we head into predictions.
Yes, let's do that, shall we?
Ooh.
And now, your AfterBuzz TV predictions.
I'm pulling out my list of team members, even though the teams are now dissolved.
Are defunct, yes.
Yeah. So we have Lily, Ben, Rochelle, Caitlin, and Amanda and Jonathan left. Correct?
Correct.
Okay. Next episode we go from 6 to 4, and then in the finale we go from 4 to 1. Correct?
I would not say that.
Oh. Well then. Okay. Now I have new predictions.
Well, I mean, that was certainly the way it was played last year. I'm not sure that that's the way it's played this year.
I feel like I'm talking to myself now. Okay.
All right. Well, try. See what you come up with.
So if it's...
Let's say that's true.
Let's say that's true. If it's like last year, here's my prediction. That we will go from these 6 to 4 females. I think that if this is how it's going to happen, the 4 ladies are going to realize that they can easily overpower the other 2 and get them out, which would be amazing. Because we don't have teams anymore. So just, ladies, girl power. So that's my theory.
Okay.
That's my prediction, that it's going to go, and the last 4 are going to be the women. We have Lily, Amanda, Rochelle, and Caitlin. That's who I think.
So you think that the 2 guys will go out
next episode
and leave the last 4?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's my prediction.
All right.
As for who's going to win,
yeah, where are you on this?
I think it's between Caitlin and Rochelle.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Why?
So Caitlin, like Colby, I think was one of the stronger players in a different way than everyone else.
Right.
So I think she's going to go far. And because she doesn't feel any loyalty to any of them. and so I think that that's going to benefit her. I think that's such a great place to be in. Is like, yeah, we're not BFFs. Calm down.
Right.
I got this.
Yes. Well, she's definitely been on that for a while. Yeah.
And Rochelle, because I feel like she's kind of been under the radar. Mm-hmm. And she has never really, I think, she's never been challenged. And I think that is working in her favor.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'll be here next week, and we can go over that.
Yeah.
We'll see how it all worked out.
Well, if I'm wrong and it doesn't work out that way, then here's, I think, Amanda, Lily, and Jonathan. If it doesn't work out the way that it was last year with the 6 and then the 4 and then the 1, is that Amanda, Lily, and Jonathan will somehow take over together and be left at
Amanda,
the end. Lily,
Jonathan. Okay.
Mm-hmm. At the end of next episode, it'll be the 3 of them.
All right, but then, what is your prediction for the victor? If that's how it.
And then I have no idea.
You have no idea.
At that point, I have no idea.
All right. Well, that's really interesting. That's an interesting couple of scenarios there.
Yeah, it could be anything at this point. I don't know.
It really could be.
It's anybody's game, guys. Why don't you tell them where they can find you on Twitter if they don't already know?
You can find me on Curtis's Booger.
Okay.
CurtisIsBooger.
Awesome. And if you want to find
me... And I have a Facebook page, too.
Oh, what's your Facebook page?
It's Curtis the Nerd.
Interesting.
I think.
You're not sure?
But, I mean, if you look me up on Facebook, you'll find me. I'm there. People find me. So,
good.
Whatever it is, I'm there.
Awesome. And if you want to find me, I'm online at yael.tv. That's YAEL.tv. Also, if you're a fan of Drunk History, you are going to want to see Tipsy Tora because it is hilarious.
Oh, God.
Also, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, Google+, Pinterest, Polyvore, and Facebook at Yael Tygiel. That's YAELTYGIEL. And we'll see you here next week for more King of the Nerds.
Bye-bye, everyone.
From executive producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire AfterBuzz TV staff, we would like to thank you for listening to the AfterBuzz TV network. To watch or listen to other after shows and post comments or questions, be sure to visit AfterBuzzTV.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of AfterBuzz TV.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.